look at digital transformation not as a technology solution or not as a channel to market or a marketing type solution, but really looking at it as end-to-end business transformation.
Hello and welcome to a whole new episode of Engati CX. I am your host, Drishti, and today you folks are in for a treat. We have a digital transformation expert with us on the show today. But before I introduce you to our guest, allow me to introduce you to the magic of Engati. Engati is the world's leading multilingual no-code open chatbot platform, available across 14 channels with 35,000 bots created across 186 countries in every domain and use case. Engati has also been recognized as a top platform by INC, Tech World, CIO, and many others. We run the Engati blog, video channel, and the Engati CX podcast, receiving upwards of 400,000 visitors annually. And now for our guest. Kamales Lardi is the Chief Executive Officer of Lardi and Partner Consulting. She has been ranked as one of the top 10 digital transformation experts in the world by Thinkers 360. She has over 2 decades of experience in advising companies across various industries and mobilizing successful business and digital transformation initiatives from strategy to execution. So, hi, Kamlesh. We are really happy to have you on Engati CX.
Hi, Drishti. It's good to be here today. Thank you for having me.
So, I would like to begin with the first important question: that what is the ideal digital transformation strategy framework?
So if I can just preface that with a little bit of context, I think what has happened over the last probably decade or so in the global business environment is we've seen some digital disruptions as well as other disruptive elements changing the business landscape as a whole. So things like rapid development of new technologies, increasing competitive landscape, new players entering the market that are kind of digitally native, as well as the rapidly evolving consumer behaviors and adoption of technologies, and also things like regulatory changes according to these new technologies. So we've seen these disruptions impacting how businesses operate. And what has happened now recently with the coronavirus pandemic is so it's accelerated these disruptions or disruptors that are impacting the organizations that we're seeing. So when we look at digital transformation, what is essential for a framework that you're going to use is basically to be able to develop agile and flexible solutions that can fit these environments that are rapidly changing and being impacted by internal and external factors, as well as a framework that's able to develop or to produce sustainable solutions, changes that are going to last the organization over a set amount of years, and it's going to continuously impact the organization in a positive way. So what I've developed is a digital transformation methodology or framework that has 4 phases that really adapts itself or can be customized according to the maturity level or the stage that an organization is at, or even in terms of the readiness of an organization for these transformations. So the methodology has 4 phases. It goes through situational analysis, which is the first phase. And that's really a kind of a health check of the organization. It does an external trend scan. It does an internal environment analysis. It also has a digital maturity assessment tool that I've developed, and this is available online for anyone to try. And it looks at 6 different phases or dimensions of the organization. So we're very particular about moving away from the focus of technology and looking at how an organization should transform, or what the kind of overall impact on an organization is. The second phase really looks at disruptive visioning. And here we set a vision, or we help companies define a vision for the next couple of years or the next time frame they're looking at. And this really takes into account the disruptive factors in the market, like new technologies and the capabilities that are created by these technologies, or new potential business models that are coming out in the market. And we focus on 4 dimensions within this space, which are broken down into 16 digital building blocks. And these building blocks set a strong foundation for companies in terms of assessing themselves. Where should they be? What should they be developing? The 4 dimensions where these building blocks sit really look at customer experience, products and services, the operational or process environment and internal capabilities, as well as new business model elements. The third phase of the whole framework really looks at then developing your strategic framework or roadmap for transformation. And this part is really essential. It's something that not very many companies focus on. It's really looking at defining your target operating model or your digital operating model. So how does your organization need to transform in terms of capabilities, processes, the products and services you offer, the engagement you have with your customers, the channels you use, as well as your technology landscape? What are these elements and how they need to transform in order to deliver on the vision you have? And then finally, you have the build and implement phase, which looks at building out these technology solutions. So as a whole, the end-to-end framework that we offer provides a really structured way for leadership teams to navigate through the transformation process. But it can be kind of condensed or expanded depending on the maturity level of the organization, depending on the readiness, also depending on the amount or the level of investments companies are ready to put into this process as well. So it's quite a flexible but sustainable approach, I would say.
That's true. So, do you think organizations these days are missing out on some steps from this framework?
If we think about missing out, probably not. But what I have seen is organizations focusing on certain elements more so than the entire end-to-end process. So we are seeing quite a lot of emphasis on customer experience elements. So in terms of digital marketing, in terms of launching new channels to market. We're also seeing companies focus a lot on the technology side of things. So one thing I always say to leadership teams when I work with them is technology is not a silver bullet solution. It's not a one-off solution for all your problems. So obviously there is a technology solution for everything imaginable that you want to implement, but that doesn't resolve the business issues that you have. So a lot of times we see companies implement AI or whatever technology it is and hope that this will resolve the business solution that they're facing. So this, for me, I find an interesting challenge as well. What we try to do with the framework is refocus the organization on the customer centricity. Who are your customers? Who are your current customers as well as future customers? How are they behaving today? How will they behave in the future? And what kind of products and services and offerings or value you could bring to them in the market? So we focus on the value proposition element, and we focus on basically delivering to the market what the kind of solving the market problems, I would say. And this differentiates the approach that we take in terms of helping organizations refocus and zoom in on specific needs that are in the market.
That's absolutely true. And like you said, customer experience people, there are companies who are trying to leverage technology solutions for customer experience or to enhance them. But I guess somehow they want to do it, but they miss out on things like you just said. So how would this framework help them focus on which technologies that they should be, procuring or something of that sort?
So I think if we take a step back, the whole point of calling this process a digital transformation or digital business transformation is because there is a technology has the capability to resolve a lot of the challenges that organizations face. And as you said, how do we focus on which technology to do that and when to focus and what is the priority? And I think this is the biggest challenge a lot of companies are facing today in the post-COVID environment, in terms of you have limited resources, you have limited investment. Where do I put my focus? What is the key thing that's going to bring in the best return on my investment? And here we try to focus on two elements. One is how are your customers behaving? How are they engaging? What do they want? And we've seen this element of customer behavior and the level of adoption of technologies and channels significantly change over the kind of 3-4 months of the quarantine pandemic or lockdown time of the pandemic. And this transformation, this was unheard of. We'd never seen such a rapid development in such a short time frame before. So this was something that I think organizations need to reassess how their customer base is engaging, how they are behaving. What are the kind of channels that they're focused on? We're seeing some channels, for example, take priority compared to other channels. There are some studies or surveys that indicate, for example, customers don't want to engage with, or they engage much less with organizations that don't have a live chatbot, for example, or they engage much less with organizations that don't have this sort of the interactive element on their websites. And the focus used to always be your customers want to have these face-to-face real life engagements, and that's where you get the value, or that's where you can deepen the experiences. But the post-COVID environment has shifted that mindset towards, we can shift to a more digital environment. We just need to understand what customers are comfortable with and where they want to engage and how they want to engage. So we focus a lot on that kind of customer value proposition piece. And the second piece that we focus on is really, what are your organization capabilities, right? There could be a lot out there that you want to do as an organization, but very few things that you can effectively do based on your own capabilities, your own infrastructure, the knowledge you have in the organization, and how you can optimize your current practices. If I give you an example, one organization that we are currently working with, they have, over the COVID environment, rapidly increased the number of digital engagement points or touch points to customers. And this was commendable because they created, in a very short 2-3 week time frame, access to their products and services via apps, via internet banking, online channels, and so on, which as an organization was a huge jump for them. They were digitally kind of at the lower end of the digital maturity. However, what was neglected during that quick response time was the internal operations. So they managed to boost the number of engagements that customers can have to them, but they did not focus on how they are processing those engagements or requests that are coming in. And so there was a bottleneck, which created then a huge amount of customer dissatisfaction as well. There were lots of complaints about, why doesn't my request get processed, my application get processed, my acquisitions get processed, and so on. And so this is one of the key elements that we focus on. We need to make sure that end to end, you're transforming through the organization. And if you're not able to manage this kind of end to end process, then you lose out as an organization as a whole, I think. So these are some of the elements we focus on.
That's a great example, actually. And like you said, that there are parts where people, the four phases that you explained, right? So if we are maybe not done the first phase, that is a situation analysis, then that might be a possibility where you did not consider what is going to be the internal acceptance or operations, and just a build and implement solution was done. So that was a mismatch maybe somewhere. So yeah, that
absolutely. So they kind of skipped the two phases in between. And I would have to say, there is a reason the phases are set up the way that they are set up as well, because the situational analysis allows us to take kind of a health check of where you are today. But we start with the visioning, because this is the biggest challenge that I find with working with leadership teams and with management teams. Sometimes you get very much set in a certain belief system or a certain way of doing things. And the disruptive visioning element really helps us to kind of break away from that. So we run visioning workshops where we help. So another example would be a mass global retail company that we worked with. We conducted a visioning workshop with them with the management team, basically about 20 people. And we asked them to imagine a scenario, and it was kind of, we broke them into working groups and asked them to imagine a scenario. What if Netflix bought over your company? How would they run your company? So this kind of breaks you away from the current thinking process. It challenges your current beliefs, right? And of course, we preface that exercise with a good amount of kind of case presentation around what Netflix does and how they operate differently and so on. And then we break the management team into groups and say, okay, now you guys work on different elements. tell us how you think the Netflix as an organization would run your company and what would be different. And this was really a wow moment for them, because when they started to go through that process, they had to really break away from their belief system and start looking, think outside the box and start looking at things differently, and then really get the understanding things can be done differently. And we might actually be in danger of a company like Amazon or something, one of these large tech companies potentially entering our market and taking over because they are operating differently. So I think these elements, these are the things that I find quite, I'm passionate about, because when you see these aha moments and you see the impact that it has on people and the mindset, I find that quite exciting.
It is actually, and I think that this exercise is really wonderful. Like, it can give you a very different perspective of how people operate versus how. So there is one thing called as inspiring, that you read about it, but when you think about how they would run our organization, that would actually be an eye opener. That's great. That's great. So, what do you think are the key elements of building a foolproof digital transformation strategy?
So what would be key elements, apart from having, of course, a structured methodology going step by step, having a good understanding for the strengths and weaknesses of the team that you're working with as well. So here, in terms of, can the team really push the boundaries and drive the agenda of transformation that's required? And I think here the element that's really, really critical that can make or break the process is the culture and the leadership. So leadership teams need to have that growth mindset. They need to be open to the process, and they need to be open to the transformation that the process will bring. They need to lead the transformation. And I've done this many times in many organizations, and this is the element that really makes or breaks the process. You have leadership teams taking ownership, believing in the process, and saying, this is what we need as an organization, and we're going to run through this process together. And one of the clients that I worked with last year, a financial services client, the CEO of the company was fully bought into the process. He attended every single workshop, did the work with us step by step. And as a result of that, we were able to work with him to identify a new business model or a new revenue stream for the organization. And it was quite an exciting process as well. If I just share an example here, the organization, one of the things that we were mandated to do was to identify a new customer base or segment that they could reach out to, or a new product or service or business model they could put out in the market. And we helped them. It was a credit card company, and we helped them identify esports as a growing or potentially developing market that could be quite profitable for credit card acquisition. And so last Christmas, they created this product as a result of this process. They created a product for credit cards for esports and gamers, which is very rare in the market. It's a new product. They launched it last Christmas. They tested the market, and it was not so exciting results. But then COVID happened and esports took off. And so I think from that, we were able to kind of beat the curve a little bit and be ahead of the curve. And so that was quite an exciting outcome to come by. And that's an example of when the leadership team is fully bought into the process and they're engaged end to end, you can get some amazing results. The other key element is culture, which is, this whole transformation process makes a certain amount of changes in the way we work, the way we think, putting customers at the center of everything that you do, focused on delivering value in the market. And this requires a certain culture in an organization. And the culture change element is really, really key. What we have seen during the kind of COVID environment or COVID pandemic time is the coronavirus pandemic has actually accelerated or augmented existing cultures. So some organizations that already had this kind of growth culture, change, innovation culture, they were augmented and they thrived in this environment. Whereas you had other organizations which had a limiting culture, which had more of a directive culture, they struggled with this pandemic environment. And so, the COVID situation really did kind of shine a spotlight on what works and what doesn't work in an organization. And we saw that quite evident across the globe in different industries as well.
That's true. The key elements do make a difference, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
So, how can companies integrate customer experience design and product digitalization to achieve better ROI?
This is a very interesting question. I think what is probably the focus is to look at um, product digitalization itself is quite an interesting piece, right? So you have elements of either creating new products that are fit for the digital environment, or shifting your current kind of product or service portfolio into a digital offering. So you can take it in many different approaches. But I think what we try to do here is we do very little of the kind of product development. What we do is we focus on the customer value proposition exercises. We look at who can you target in the market? Who are you targeting today? Are there new segments that you could target? Or can you deep dive into certain segments to increase profitability and so on? We focus on that side of things. And then we couple that with, if we focus on these products and if we focus on these customers and these value propositions that we can offer them, what is the product outcome that you can what kind of products in your current portfolio can you use to fit this need, and is there something new you need to develop? And I think this focuses our energy and our investments on very specific products that you can digitize or digitalize or offer on the digital market. And one of the things the kind of digital environment does is it allows you to dematerialize, it allows you to offer products and services at a much lower cost than a physical environment, for example. And I think this is where we can see higher return on investments on products that we put out in the market, products or services. So the focus really has to be on what the market wants today and in the future, and how you can deliver on that based on your current portfolio and your internal environment, and then deep dive or kind of zoom into specific product offerings. And that's where you can see a higher return on investments.
So, are there any other thoughts that you would like to share with our audience?
I think if I leave the audience with just one key point, is basically to look at digital transformation not as a technology solution, or not as a channel to market or a marketing type solution, but really looking at it as end-to-end business transformation. This would be my kind of key point that I want to emphasize for organizations. It isn't something that's short term. It isn't something that's a one-off effort. It's something that develops over time. You can build on it over time. And it is an end-to-end transformation of an organization. So transforming, you can start off obviously by transforming one area or one function in your company, typically starting off with some kind of a technology solution to optimize your internal environment, or to engage better with customers. But you need to follow that through with transformation internally in terms of upskilling your employee base, redefining your processes, optimizing your operations. So it really has a lot of benefits that can be taken right through the organization. And the key element to that is really having leadership own the process and drive this process, demonstrating to the whole organization the importance of this. And the kind of, it can be quite a scary process, so I have to emphasize that as well. It brings to light things that don't work in the organization. It brings to light silos in organization functions. It does also bring to light a lot of fears that people might have. I've spoken to leadership team members who've said to me, they're losing control of their department based on the process. I've spoken to CEOs who've said this is a very, very lonely environment to be in, at the top. So this is, I think, a very people-focused process as well. And it does kind of open a can of worms within organizations. But I think what is important is to have this kind of structured methodology, and to have the leadership buy-in and ownership of the process, and make sure that the organization focuses on sustainable change and transformation as well.
That's amazing. I guess that is the best piece of advice businesses can take today.
Thank you, Drishti.
Thank you so much, Kamalesh, for giving us your time, your insights that you have shared, and the strategy that you have shared on how they can go about implementing. That is really great and valuable, and the audience will really enjoy the interview.
Thank you so much for having us. And I hope that the audience will be able to check out our methodology on our website. We are able to deliver the transformation, the first three phases within 20 days, which is something that is quite exciting that we have launched post-COVID. So this might be valuable for them to check out. Thank you again for having me.
Absolutely. So we'll be back with a new episode with a brand new expert soon. So stay tuned and we'll see you around for the next one.